Hi, everybody. Welcome to the live, rescheduled because the internet wasn't our friend last time. That's okay. I have my fingers crossed for this one. Let's hope this works out. So again, the purpose of these Q&A lives are for you to tune in for my conversations with another rec therapist and to learn about the field, learn about the different roles and hats that a recreation therapist can have, and hopefully get your questions answered. So again, I'm gonna leave some time for people to log in and for Meagan to log in, and then she can introduce herself. She usually doesn't really need an introduction. She's well known to the TR community. And she's here. Hey, Meagan. Okay, let's do this. I hope I can see you. So we're just waiting for her to connect. I can see you. I hope you can see me.
I can see you. Unfortunately, it's lagging.
It's lagging.
Unfortunately, but maybe it'll catch up. Okay, that looks a little bit better.
Okay. We will be patient. Thank you for, yes, thank you for being able to reschedule this. I was super excited.
Let me try one thing, Chelsea. Let me see if this is going to help us.
All right. Let's hope this helps with the lag situation. Okay.
Okay, does that look better?
It's still a little pixely, but it is better.
Okay, awesome.
Yes,
Yay!
a lot better. Okay.
Awesome. Yay, we finally got it to work.
Yes, I tested this earlier with my sister to make sure it worked. So I had my fingers crossed for this one.
I have my fingers crossed too. I think that this is going to be, I think the internet's going to be on our side tonight, and I think we're going to have a successful Instagram Live. I feel good about it.
Totally. Me too. So, again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And I mean, I've shared this with you, and I've shared this with some people actually that, I mean, I have followed you since I was a student and on your blog, and you actually helped me a lot with creating my own elevator pitch for TR. And ever since, I've just been a little fangirl, and then I just got to get to know you, and I just love you as a person, love you as a rec therapist. And for those who don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself and role you hold.
Sure. So my name is Meagan Young. I've been a rec therapist now for about 8 years. I studied in Newfoundland and Labrador at Memorial University. Go Seahawks. And I have gone all over the place. I've worked in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and now I'm in Florida. And you might think, Meagan, how have you been so many places in 8 years? And the answer is that I just love to travel and I love opportunity. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, so adventure is like my love language. And so when opportunity comes up, I can't help but join. So right now I am in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I've been here for a little over a year. I'm working as a supervisor of the rec therapy department with the city of St. Petersburg. So it's a new and very interesting role. Working in a Parks and Rec department, I kind of feel like Leslie Knope, or at least, that's who I like try and channel on a daily basis, which is like government agency is a very different world than working in a hospital or a treatment center where I've been at before. But the really cool thing about it is that we're able to impact so many people on a very broad scale, and they come to us for programming. So unlike like a treatment center or a hospital where you're kind of, knocking on patient rooms and hoping to draw people out to programs, that the folks that we're serving are like actively choosing to come out to programming. So it's like a little bit different in that sense, which has been really enjoyable. But yeah, we serve children, youth, and adults with physical, intellectual, and developmental disabilities, and I love it.
Amazing. Yes, you have been all over the place. That is so interesting. I think that's one of the rare things. I don't think a lot of people have the privilege, or you have to be you just said, you have to be a certain type of personality to be able to do that type of thing. So did you want to give us a little bit of insight in terms of, speaking about the differences working from the US, because I'm in Canada, so I have no experience working in the US.
Oh no, a little bit of a lag going on.
Yeah.
Okay, you're back though.
Okay. Did you catch my question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I did. Was it about the differences between Canada and US with regards to working as a rec therapist in both? Okay.
Yes.
I got you, girl. So it's been extremely interesting, growing up in Canada and just being accustomed to universal healthcare and both the pros and the cons of that system. And then coming to America, both like personally and professionally, and not like just it was a bit of a shock, really, like learning the first time that I had to, like, how much do I have to pay for that medication, or do I really have to pay that much to go and see a walk-in clinic? Like, it was a bit shocking considering that I also had healthcare coverage, and really good healthcare coverage from the places I was working at. So it really opened my eyes to the differences in the two systems. And I think, working as a healthcare provider or working as a person of service, to be able to see those differences and to experience it firsthand, then you're a little bit more empathetic to what people are going through, who are knocking on your door and who are receiving treatment. Trying to wrap my head around Medicaid, Medicare, all these different forms, the waivers and how you can get funding for different programs has been interesting too. And I'm still in the process of learning it. But yeah, there are some like major differences that I had to I was 30 when I moved here, so my 30-year-old brain around.
I can imagine. I know that has definitely been a big struggle, let alone somebody with a disability or just looking for extra funding. I think that's difficult across the board. But I think, well, you dive more into the funding aspect, given that you're a supervisor. Is that right?
1 second, I'm just gonna shut mine.
Yeah.
My dog is being excitable. So to dive into the funding aspect of my program or for other programs?
Yeah, well, just based on your experience, what you experienced.
Sure. So, well, the program I'm working for right now is it's a nonprofit. It's a city. So, working for a public agency, you're really just trying to like break even all the time. We're not trying to collect a major profit. So a lot of our programs are like incredibly accessible. And I think that's the beauty in a therapeutic recreation program that's run through a city department. You are getting highly specified services from highly trained folks for a fraction of the cost that you would get anywhere else. So me and my coworkers kind of broke it down this summer because we were functioning at like a much lower capacity due to COVID, that people, like families, when we broke down the cost of the program, were paying, I think it was like 75 cents an hour for childcare, and childcare for their, child with autism or Down syndrome who might require like specialized instruction for how to work with them and provide for them. And it was just mind-boggling, and I felt so grateful to be able to work for an organization where you could provide a service at such an accessible cost.
That's amazing. It's a very good cost.
Yes, it was crazy, but it's like, it wouldn't be like that all the time, but summer 2020 kind of
right
did it for us.
Definitely. So I'm curious, I have never held a position as a supervisor. So I'm just curious in terms of that role that you hold, that you could speak a little bit of that as a recreation therapist.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my first time working as a supervisor, it was probably about 3 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. And the thing that I wish that I had known was that just because you're a great rec therapist doesn't always mean that supervising is going to come naturally to you. I do really love supervising. I love leadership, and I love developing other skills. So that has been like really helpful on my supervisory journey. But there's a lot of learning that went into it, how to work with different personalities and how to best support them, and how to go from being like a peer to then being a supervisor, because that saying, it's lonely at the top. Well, like, your relationships do alter and they do change, and so you're not just one of the rec therapists on the go. Now you're supervising the program. There's an added pressure that you're receiving both from the staff that you're supervising and from your administration or your management. So you're kind of in the middle, and you're trying to help and provide for both, your administration and your staff the best you can. And it's a learning. It's a very big learning. But sometimes it's not for everybody, and the skills of a rec therapist, you definitely need to expand yourself and learn more in order to move into a role as a supervisor.
Yeah, definitely. So some people might not know, but like how long have you been in the field before you got that supervisor position?
So I would have been in the field for 5 years. When I was younger, before I was a rec therapist, I worked as a lifeguard forever, and so I did like some supervisory stuff there. And then as a rec therapist in other roles, I did, like, we were responsible for helping out or supervising the rec therapy workers, so I had like a little bit of an experience there as well. But yeah, you come to a certain point in your career, which I guess for me was 5 years, and I was like, I wanted that new challenge. I wanted to push myself to learn a little bit more. And I think I was ready to, not that I wanted to like step away from frontline, because I'm still very, very much frontline, but to be able to impact things on like a little bit of a greater scale. I think like the further you go up, you're a little bit more removed from that frontline service, but the higher you go in management or organizational structure, that you can have like hopefully a bigger impact on systematic changes. So that was kind of about 5 years ago, I had decided to do that. And even right now, I'm faced with another choice to maybe move up one more level in management, which would remove me again from that frontline, rec therapy aid-pied surface. But I would be maybe moving one step closer to where I want to go and creating bigger change. So
right,
it's definitely a different role.
Yes. And for those who are, I know some people that logged in that aren't familiar with the recreation therapy field. So the API process is assessment, planning, implementation, I blocked, examination, and development? Did I document? I'm like, because I always say API. I always leave the D out. So I'm like, oh dear.
No, I think that
That
was like
was,
a racing edition. You're fine. If you got API, you're
okay,
good, because you can probably
there we
like
go.
bring documentation and evaluation into one happy family there.
That's fair. Yeah. Just for those who joined that aren't familiar with the field.
Sure.
For those who did just join, again, on the comment section, feel free to ask your questions for Meagan. And so, Meagan, also as a supervisor role, what skills would you say are crucial to work on to be in that position?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a really good question. I think one of the best skills that you can work on is your interpersonal interactions, because if you kind of have to look at your staff as if you were looking at one of your clients and one of the people that you're serving, in the sense that like you need to understand them and you need to understand what's motivating them and what their goals are. Because if you don't know that and you're just constantly kind of like giving out tasks and telling them what to do, you're going to create some like animosity amongst the team members, that you don't understand them or you don't get their concerns, or that you're not really helping them on their journey where they want to go. So I think one of the best lessons I ever learned was to listen and to get to know my staff and to find out what their internal drives are, and then do my best to like use their skills to help the major goals. So it's kind of like taking a step back before pushing forward, if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. That is a huge strength, I gotta say, through my experience of having supervisors or bosses, is really, creating a relationship, like you said, being engaged, because understanding that nobody is the same.
No. And people, everyone has different personalities, and you almost also have to adapt how you interact with everybody else, as opposed to expecting the other way around, because you are that one step above, and like the organizational structure, like you have to do that little bit more of legwork to understand, like, okay, this person like really just wants direct feedback. They want, to know the outcomes. They want to know what they need to do and just go ahead and do it. Well, this person might need a little bit more like emotional support and to talk it through and to have their feelings heard, because you have to take a different approach to both. So that's where I'm at right now in my career as a supervisor.
That's great. And do you have, this is my curiosity, do you touch base regularly? Like how, I guess my question would be, do you have daily team huddles, or do you check in weekly with your staff? How does that communication look like for you?
Great question. So within my team, we try and do like a big staff meeting all together at least once or twice a month. But when it comes to like personal check-ins, I really try to make, at least like on every shift that I see one of my staff members, I try and have like one touchstone, one touch point where I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Like, I know about their lives. I'm like, how are your kids? What's going on? And then like, do you need anything from me? Is there anything I could do today to support you? So we're kind of having those like informal interactions. But then on like a broader scale, the city requires us to do staff appraisals every 6 months. So that's when we actually sit down, and it's kind of like an assessment. I think it's very helpful as a rec therapist. Like, you can take those skills of how you do an assessment and use it when you're doing your staff appraisals. Because I'm sitting there and I'm just setting goals with them, which I absolutely love to do, and I'm learning more about them. So that's how we do it with our structure anyways.
Mm-hmm. That's really important. I know that's something that when I started my new job last year, it was a 6-month probation. So obviously I had to do a sit down with my manager after, and It was informal a little bit just because she phrased it in a way, well, if there was something wrong, you'd probably hear it by now. But that formal goal setting and really sitting down with someone, I think it's just beneficial on both sides, right? Like it's beneficial on my side when I leave that office to be more clear as where I'm headed professionally, and at least that my manager is on the same page, and now they know if resources pop up, they can redirect it my way. So definitely, speaking from experience too, that is definitely an awesome way to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love it too. Like, I love it. I'm such a weirdo, but like when I have my own personal staff evaluations, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Like, I got my notes. I got like all my goals I want to set. Like, give me feedback.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's, sometimes you might get some like hard feedback. Like, you probably need to work a little bit more on this, and this is what I noticed. But if you're able to take that and not take it personally, but take it as like a guiding light for where you could go, then your potential is endless.
That's actually a good point. The constructive criticism aspect of things, has that been something that you never really struggled with, or is that something that you have worked on? Because I'm just speaking, these are just my own questions. Nobody's commenting their questions, so I'm just taking advantage of talking to you, Meagan.
No, you're okay. You're okay. I love it.
Because definitely, especially if it's somebody that might be listening to this that's new in a position that has to give feedback, and constructive criticism can be a little hard sometimes. Do you have any helpful strategies or for those people?
Yeah. Well, I will say, first of all, no, I was not always good on taking criticism.
Okay.
I'm not like some superhuman that's just like, I can take anything. Like, no, like it's been a lot of work, and it's still something I'm working through, and just making sure that whenever I do, like, my ego gets in the way, and I'm like, how dare they say that about me? Like, I am so good at my job. I'm like, okay, Meagan, remove your ego, see how this can help you, and really try and look at it from that perspective. So that's a work in progress. With regards to giving feedback, yes, that is a terrifying thing as well. And there's this really simple structure. I'm sure a lot of people know about this, but I do it. And like, you can get really, really good at it. I feel like I'm so good at it at this point, but it's called the sandwich feedback. So you start by like saying something really good, like, so-and-so, I love the work you did in that group. Like, you had such an impact on those participants. Like, way to go, love that. And then like, so like, that's your first slice of bread. And then you get into the meat of it. And you're like, hey, next time, I think it would be a great idea if you incorporated this, or, maybe when you're talking to the participants, you just watch your tone a little bit so that you're not giving off the wrong vibe or something like that. And then you finish it off with another slice of bread, and you're like, I don't know what you want to say at this point. Hey, I love that assessment you wrote the other week. It was so spot on. Great job. So like, you're kind of warming them up. You're giving the feedback in like a very clear, straightforward way. And then you're like making it a little bit softer by like giving one more compliment. And then that way, hopefully the person's able to like focus on the positive aspects of the conversation and see the middle part as something that they actually want to do.
That is great advice. Yes. It's always good to have it in that format, for sure. Slow in the transition.
Sometimes people see right through it and they're like, are you sandwiching me? Maybe.
They're like, what's next? That's awesome. And so as a supervisor, you mentioned that you still have experience, well, not experience necessarily, but the option to work frontline with your clients. So what does that look like for you as a supervisor?
So it works like being really selective on where I decide to spend my energy. So, for instance, the program I'm working at right now requires a lot of like admin tasks that the staff or that the supervisor has to do, but then we run a ton of programs. And the cool thing about knowing my staff is I know some of them are really, really great on running the programs on their own, and they don't need my support, and they are good to do it. So it would be counterintuitive or a waste of my time to go and be like, I need to be at that program with that person. Also, it would kind of show maybe I don't trust them or that the program needs help or something else. So knowing that the programs we're offering are already taken care of by fantastic staff, I can then look at my time and allocate my own strengths like into our programming structure. So last year, it was my first year with the job, but I decided to start a new program because we didn't have a specific like leisure education life skills program for emerging adults. So I decided I still wanted to do frontline, like of offering programs and interacting with the participants, but I decided to take my own spin on it and develop my own course or my own program, while the other programs were running simultaneously. So I think as a supervisor, you just have to be smart about your time and know that you can do anything, you just can't do everything. So you have to, trust your staff, trust that they're going to get the job done. And if they don't, then that's when you have to intervene and help out. But if you trust them, then you're able to take your time and hopefully grow your program and still be able to do that frontline work too.
Yeah, that's a skill in itself. Time management and prioritizing for sure.
Yeah. There's a great book called Essentialism by Greg McEwen, and he also does a class on Skillshare if anyone uses Skillshare. But it's all about like how to be productive versus being busy and using your time wisely. So that's something I did the course and I purchased the book. I just haven't read it yet, but that's something that I'm really trying to learn about, both in like my professional life and my personal life.
Right. Oh, that's great. I will definitely look that up. I'm like typing it as we go. And so with the clientele you work with right now, is there anything that surprised you or that you've learned by working with this population?
Oh, I love this population so much. I think what's been an interesting part of my journey is I always thought student, and even before I was a student, was to work with at-risk youth. That was like what I did all my projects on. That was what I decided to research. I was like, one day I'm going to work with at-risk youth and it's going to be my jam. And then I got a job working with at-risk youth. It was actually at a behavioral health treatment center. And honestly, I learned so much about myself in the year and a half I was there because I had never experienced that sort of compassion fatigue and burnout. And it was interesting. While I was there, I was really drawn to the patients or the clients who had intellectual and developmental disabilities, and I found that I was best able to serve them. So it was this really interesting sort of like backwards way that I realized that this was the population that I was actually called to serve. So I took a couple like punches to the ego, being like, okay, well, like maybe my heart is a little too sensitive, and maybe I'm not authoritative enough to work with the population that I thought was for me. But maybe my patience and my ability to listen and really understand and take in the whole person, maybe I'm really meant to work with children and youth and adults with autism or Down syndrome. So yeah, that was an interesting part of my journey, and I don't really know how I started it, but that's the population I'm working with now.
Amazing. That's a great way of kind of segueing too, in terms of we were definitely going to end up talking about mental health, because I know that kind of ties into what you share a lot on your page and on your blog in terms of burnout, compassion fatigue as well. For anybody that isn't familiar with that term, compassion fatigue, Do you care to share about that term?
Yeah, I love that question. So, burnout and compassion fatigue are actually two separate things, but they often happen hand in hand, especially for healthcare professionals. So, compassion fatigue happens when it's almost as if it's vicarious trauma, in the sense that you're helping somebody or groups of people that have experienced really, really difficult things. And usually that's like the big T traumas. And in the effort to help them and to support them, you actually become, so emotionally involved or invested in their health and well-being and the stories that you're hearing, that you take that on. Like, that is now on your shoulders, and it's a really hard thing to be able to, clock out at the end of your day and to stop thinking about all of the things that you saw, you witnessed, you heard about within, your shift. So I definitely experienced massive compassion fatigue. And, one of the telltale signs is that you're constantly thinking about it. And in my case, I was having dreams about, the participants and dreams about things. And I decided to seek out my own mental health counseling at that point. So that, and it was extremely helpful. And I would recommend that to anybody if they have that available to them. Burnout, on the other hand, is super, super common as well, and it doesn't just happen in the healthcare field. It happens in really every single field, and I'm sure with COVID right now, we're going to get some really interesting research that comes out of this year with the rates of burnout and the toll that that's taken on everyone's mental health. But essentially, that's when you are, you're working so hard, but you feel a little bit disenchanted, a little cynical about your work. You're not really motivated to accomplish the things that you were motivated to accomplish before, and that could be because of all of the demands that are being placed on you while you're at work. You have management telling you to do something, and your staff telling you to do something, and whatever else, and you're just not able to handle all of that pressure. And so you start to, your light is gone, and you start to give up slightly. And there's a whole 5-stage continuum of burnout, which is really interesting. But yeah, 7 out of 10 people have experienced burnout back in 2019. So I'm sure this year it'll be even higher.
Yeah. I'm not even surprised by that high number, because I have definitely experienced both, actually. And it's interesting because it's hard in this environment where I can't think of the word right now, but just that super intense work ethic is super valued now, and it's praised to get to that burnout point, unfortunately. I think that being in an environment where it's great to be around professionals that are engaged and loving their job, but I think that's where the fine line turns into where it's the same thing of, I compare it to, keeping up with the Joneses. That's how I would relate to the burnout, because I'm a new grad. I'm trying to keep up with these professionals that have been in the field for 10 plus years, that they have so much knowledge and experience that I'm like, okay, I got to be like them. And I'm just, not taking my lunch breaks, reading articles, and then come the evening, reflecting on my day and how could I improve that, where that self-improvement is important, but to a point where it takes up your whole day, is you become obsessed. I think that's where it becomes an issue for sure, like you shared at that burnout point. I'm not familiar with all the 5 stages, but I can definitely relate to at least the term that you describe, burnout, because it's common, and I think people underestimate how it could even be common with new grads. I mean, I haven't read research on it, but from somebody that I could speak as a new grad, definitely trying to keep up with the Joneses, as in keep up with the the high performing professionals around. It's definitely present.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you're so right. There's so much talk and motivation to achieve and to constantly be hustling and working your hardest and reaching these goals. And there's so much talk and focus on that without, which is fine because I think people should reach for their goals, but then there also has to be compassion and understanding, so and so information doesn't mean you won't get there. Like, this is where you're at right now, and that is perfect and beautiful and exactly where you're supposed to be. And someday you will get there, but knowing to be able how to give yourself that self-compassion and allow yourself to have that journey on your own timeline.
Yes. And that's where I found, again, on your blog, you shared about burnout for recreation therapists, and you included how to avoid burnout. And I read it, I used it, and I shared it with my whole team because, again, where it's helpful for recreation therapists, like you said, it's not just for healthcare professionals. It's for anybody in whatever position they're in, definitely. So I definitely found that helpful. And, resources, like you mentioned, reaching out for help, and the resources are there. That's the lovely thing too about, internet nowadays. The resources are there. And I definitely have found your resources really helpful. Did you expect your blog and page to become that resource guide, or did that just come about?
That's so funny. So no, I and thank you so much. That is so kind. No, I did not think that it would kind of take off the way that it did, but I am so glad that it did because I've just made the most amazing connections and relationships since doing so. Honestly, and I think I've shared about this before, but I started the blog as really my own way to process and deal with grief. Because I was at a stage in my life where I had lost someone very close to me and felt a little bit lost myself, and was, I was healthy enough to understand that I needed to find some purpose and some meaning again, and to tap into flow and all the things that I enjoy doing. And I've always loved writing. I've always journaled and written my own little short stories and essays, and I've just always really liked it. And so I decided to start a blog, and I was like, why not write about the one thing that you know so much about, which is your career and something that you're really passionate about. So that's where the blog came from for me, in my own need for leisure and my own need to challenge myself and grow. And it's been this amazing journey of every step you take, pushing yourself, more doors open up and more opportunity opens up. And the things that you didn't know that you would be led to, which is really interesting. And now I'm at this stage, so I've had the blog for about 2 years, where it's I'm not surprised anymore when new opportunities pop up or new ideas pop up, because I think if you're willing to, the universe gives you a little bit, you meet it halfway, you kind of are in this interchanging relationship with everything going on around you. And if you're willing to accept the challenge, then more things will come to you.
I can totally agree on that. This has been my experience with this page, let alone this was so out of my comfort zone, and let alone going on live with, conversation. I mean, so hopefully, okay. So definitely getting out of your comfort zone and those challenges coming up, I can definitely relate to that right now. And it's a great thing, because I think everybody should allow themselves that place of compassion to just tap into it. did mention, it's to put your ego aside. I think that's the main thing, is to be in a growth mindset, to be like, hey, I can learn something through this. And, you know, if it turns out horrible, then fine. And you have to do it for the right reasons. I know it's like you mentioned, right? Your blog, you started it for the right reasons, for yourself, for your own growth, for your own well-being. And, you know, same thing on my end, it was more just to share my passion, and that passion for advocacy, because I think everybody should know what rec therapy is. I'm definitely biased, but it's so powerful. And the message to prioritize leisure, the message to prioritize yourself, your strengths, and your mental health is definitely number one for people to understand. Is it cutting off for you?
Just like a little bit. Just a little bit.
Okay. We were doing so well.
No. It was going so well for so long.
I know. We'll keep going for a little bit at least. Hope for the best. I just still
fingers crossed.
ahead with my couple questions. One of them is revolved research, because I don't want to forget this question when I do my lives, because I think this question is important. And so my question is, I have practice. What would it be?
Okay, I only heard half the question because you froze up for a second. But was it the question about if you could have research in any, or research any question, what would it be? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I feel like a detective right now. I'm like bits and pieces, and I'm like researching.
So
am I full time? Like, can you see me, or am I cutting out too?
You're cutting out.
Oh, there. Okay, it's a little bit better now.
Yeah. So did you catch the question? Sorry.
No, I didn't get the whole thing. Sorry.
All right. No, it's okay. So if someone could conduct research that would benefit your practice, what would it be?
Oh, I love that question so much. I love research, and I love thinking about research not only for my practice, but rec therapy as a whole. One of the areas that I personally am very, very interested in, and I think that it just overlaps so beautifully with rec therapy, is positive psychology. I've started reading it and researching on my own, and it's, you know, the course that I'm about to launch is all based around positive psychology's theory of flourishing. So I think what I would want to do would be to do research with our participants, or with those with intellectual or developmental disability, around like how to support best so that they can live lives full of flourishing as well. Because I don't know if research in that area has been done specifically yet, but I'd also love to do it. So many ideas, I'll end on this one. But for their caregivers and for the family members who are taking care of these participants, because to have a child with an intellectual, developmental, and even a physical disability is, it can be isolating and exhausting and beautiful and lovely. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, and I think I would love to know about how best to support family members and caregivers, so they could also live a flourishing life too.
I would love to read up on that research too.
Maybe someday I'll do it.
Yeah. Oh, I see Tori's here. Her bunny decided her phone charger would be a good snack, so that's
Oh no!
we're
Is the
happy
bunny
you could
okay?
join. Luckily, this is going to be recorded, so for anybody that's latecomers, this is going to be posted as usual. And you actually brought up something I did want to not forget about is the course you're launching, which I am so excited about.
Yay.
More content, more learning. So it's a CEU approved course, is it? Amazing.
It is.
So do you care to share about what this course is all about?
Oh, I would love to share.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I have a new course coming out, and I have been working on it all summer. It is called the Flourishing Rec Therapist. So kind of like I was just speaking to, it has everything to do with positive psychology and our work as recreational therapists. So my rationale for developing the course was I mean, you know my story about burnout and compassion fatigue. And when I researched resources that were out there, you know, I think that there's a major gap in the continued education offered to rec therapists right now with regards to taking care of their own personal health and well-being. There's a lot of really great stuff on, you know, facilitation techniques and documentation and all like the tactical skills you need to do. But my thought was, if a rec therapist isn't able to first, you know, take care of themselves holistically, which I know I wasn't, like I needed help, and that's okay, we all need help at some point. But that if you're not able to do that, then how are you going to be able to create change and inspire action in others? So essentially a few years ago when my burnout, you know, happened, I really dove into the world of positive psychology and personal development. And this was where this idea came from, that if I could share what I was able to learn and to get from, you know, where I was a few years ago to where I'm at now, like, I just feel like I'm such a place of like, I would talk to anybody about rec therapy, and anyone who wants to come at me, like, let me tell you the research, let me tell you why this is important. It's like, I just feel so inspired and motivated. And I think that we need everyone to feel that way. And we need people in the front line who are ready to be creative and have the right mindset, because we do get a lot of, you know, negative attitudes, and we do have systematic barriers in to help rec therapists be able to take care of themselves and live a flourishing life, tapping into positive emotions, meaning, accomplishment, vitality, all of these really cool things, so that they can first take care of themselves and then take care of others.
I am so excited for this course. That is so great. And I just love the title in itself too. It just encompasses it so beautifully. I'm so excited for that.
Hey, I'm so excited to share it. We're getting very, very close.
And so how do people, well, when is it starting and how do you access this course?
So I'm going to start, like I'm kind of going to do a launch week starting next week, so that the pre-sale of the course will be on October 6th. So the course is going to open up, and it's going to be at a sale price, because I want to, you know, anyone who wants to access it for a little more affordable of a price will be able to do it in that window. And then the course will be available to start taking on October 20th. So I'm going to start promoting it on my social media. Yeah, so it's all happening, which is very, very exciting. There's a question about, do you need to be a rec therapist to take the course? So you do not need to be a rec therapist to take a course. I also wish that I had this knowledge when I was a student. You might want to talk to I don't know if the CEUs will carry over. I think it starts like once you get certified, and then you have 5 years to get all of your CEUs, which is 50 clock hours. The course is 6 clock hours. But I think the material and the information and the resources that you will get, it's going to be awesome for students too. So I would recommend it.
Yes, I recommend it too. Who doesn't want to flourish? Come on. I love it. Oh, that's so exciting. And honestly, I feel like I have my questions asked. If anybody has anything else that wants to pick Meagan's brain, just comment. Actually, I always love to just kind of have an open-ended question too, in terms of, you really did give good advice as to somebody that's starting to work with the population that you work with. So adults with intellectual, developmental disabilities.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing that I would suggest that somebody learn about is sensory processing, and understanding that all behaviors are a meaning or a way to communicate a need. I think it's, if you don't really understand somebody with autism and why they're, self-stimming, or maybe why they're acting out, you might think that it's just bad behavior. But really, it could be, a biological need. Like, they might be sensory seeking, so that's why they're running around the room or yelling or whatever else they're doing. So I think I would tell anybody who is new to this population or interested in working with it, to understand a little bit more about the biological and like the neurochemical processes behind why some of your participants are doing what they're doing. Because then, number one, you're going to have more patience, and you're going to be able to problem solve a lot better as well. And then number two, you're going to see these behaviors as actually like a really beautiful, fun part of who that person is. And, if they need to run around the room, let them run around the room, as long as they're doing it in a safe way. Yeah, I think that would be my advice for someone who's new to this population.
That is great advice. Have you found any helpful resources for people to learn more about that background?
Yeah, so I believe it's called the Autism Network. I mean, if you type in autism and behavioral support into Google, you're going to have so many resources thrown at you right away. Google's just so helpful like that. But there's a really good, I think it's called the Autism Network, where they have like a whole training on behavioral techniques and how best to work with the population. So that would be one resource I would recommend checking out.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Well, like I said, I feel like I picked your brain enough, and I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, and I hope people's questions were answered, or, again, at least you took out one piece of learning through this conversation. And I'm sure Meagan's always open to help. She's a very generous soul, so just connect with her through Grow Through Flow. And I'm always open to, if ever you do have questions related to this conversation or just in general, it's always good to ask questions for those who are happy to answer them.
Yes, and thank you so much, Chelsea. I love this series that you're doing. I think you're doing a great job, and all of the new students that are watching, it's so nice to be able to see somebody who is just a little bit ahead of you in life and, new into their career, so that they can feel inspired and just learn a little bit more about where their life is going. So I thank you for doing this.
Of course. I know this is what I needed as a student. So you just live and learn. So I'm happy to be doing this.
Awesome.
Well, thanks again. And I know the connection was still a little wonky, but at least we were able to have a consistent conversation.
We made it through.
We did it. And for every video, I do add closed captions to them. So if anybody's annoyed by the lag or, the video, just focus on the closed captions and they'll be there. So again, thank you. And thanks everybody. Time to watch. And happy Sunday. Have an amazing week.
Hey, have a great week.
And I can't wait to access that course.
So soon. It's happening so soon. I've been working so hard on it.
Inclusive queen, like Tori says. All right. Well, thanks again. And thank you to everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you.